All right, I think we have everybody. And everyone can hear me, I'm assuming. If you can't, you can do under question and answers. You can send questions if you're having a problem hearing or anything else. We are going to take questions towards the end of our webinar. And, you know,
You hear me,
we'll go from
Kerriann?
there. Yes.
Good.
Okay, so I'm assuming all of you can hear me and Joe. If you can't, okay, from Marissa, I can't see you. Oh, never mind. Okay, I'm glad you figured it out, Marissa, because I'm not a technical person. I don't know if I would figure out why you couldn't see me. All right, so I'm hoping everyone can see and hear us. We can't see you, but you can hear us. All right, tonight we're going to be talking about Raynham Hall. Okay, let me just make sure. Okay, thank you, Michael, saying we can hear and see you. I appreciate the feedback. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking to you about the historic and haunted Raynham Hall Museum in Oyster Bay. And this was one of our earlier investigations when I first met Joe, was at Raynham Hall Museum. So we're going way back in time now to 2005. So for those of you who have not joined us before on our webinars, I'd like to give you a quick background about what I do. I am an author, historian, a photographer, and a ghost investigator. My degree is actually in photography, and writing came a little bit later when I got involved with the Huntington Historical Society and took an interest in the history of the town that I live in. And I'm the author of 8 books. 6 of them are nonfiction, the majority of them focusing on ghosts and local history. I've written a book on historic crimes, and I've also co-authored an Italian cookbook with Mr. Sausage in Huntington, because cooking is my other love. And no, the cookbook is not haunted, but we have haunted places in historic haunts of Long Island. And I also have written one novel called The Medal, which is based on a true story of what happened to me during my father's 16-year battle with multiple sclerosis, an Italian angel, and Padre Pio, the saint who bore the stigmata. So you can check out all my books on my website, KerriannFlanaganBrosky.com. And I'm presently working on my 9th book, which will be out next fall. Hopefully we will be back to doing in-person events. And that one is called Haunted Long Island Mysteries. And it will have 18 stories of brand new places on Long Island that Joe and I have investigated. I'm currently working on the last 3 stories. And for those of you who may have middle grade children in the house, my book, Historic Haunts of Long Island, was recently adapted for middle grade fiction by Rachel Kempster Barry. And she chose 16 of my 30 stories in that book and wrote it for middle grade fiction. And again, the whole purpose of my books is to teach and promote local history in the hopes of preserving it. And what better way to learn about local history than through a ghost story? So that's a little bit about my background. And I met Joe Giaquinto in 2005. So I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. Joe?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So in 1980, I moved into a haunted house. It was like an Amityville horror experience. And I got very interested in the paranormal from that point. Fast forward all the way to 2005. And I was attending Kerriann's event at the Conlon barn in Huntington. And we immediately made a connection. I think, Kerriann, you always said that maybe your father had a hand in that to get some help, because Kerriann had been talking about, she'd been doing all these investigations, historical investigations, these beautiful mansions around Long Island, these very historic Gold Coast mansions. And she felt like she always got ghost stories, and she felt, well, maybe that's something she needed a paranormal investigator for. And of course, I walked in, as she says, and we talked, and I agreed to work on the book with her. And so from that point on, we just started investigations in earnest. And the first investigations, the first couple of years, were more like really like Ghostbuster type investigations with a historical background. But as I did more of these, and Kerriann and I worked together for several years, I began to pick up my intuition as a medium and a psychic medium. And so I use that now in my business to do readings, and also in the field when Kerry and I go out to a investigation in the field. I put on my mediumship hat. So I'm kind of my own ghost busting equipment, and it's been great. We've been doing this now. I can't believe it's like 16 years going on. 16 years.
It's a long time, Joe, and we've investigated over 100 presumably haunted places on Long Island. But like I said, tonight we'll be talking about Raynham Hall,
which is one of our favorite places.
Yes, and Joe had done actually investigations there prior to meeting me, and then that's why we came together with that at first. So how I want to work this tonight, I'm going to tell you about Raynham Hall's background. I'm going to read you some excerpts from my original book, Ghosts of Long Island, so you can get an idea about it. And then we have some slides we want to show you so you get an idea of what it looks like. And Joe's going to handle the investigative portion of it. So we have a lot of interesting things for you tonight. If you haven't been to Raynham Hall in Oyster Bay, I suggest you go. Call ahead of time because I don't know what the restrictions are, if they're even open at this point because of COVID, unfortunately. But at least you'll be able to see through the pictures. Raynham Hall has an amazing Revolutionary War history to it, but it also has a tremendous amount of ghost stories that actually date back from long ago. It was built in 1740 for Samuel and Sarah Townsend, who were from Norfolk, England. They were descendants of the British Townsends, who owned a place called Raynham in Norfolk, England. And Raynham actually means river home. And so when they came to the United States, they had purchased 6 acres, which is now consisting of downtown Oyster Bay. They had built a 4-room house, which originally, today Raynham Hall is actually 22 rooms because of their growing family. They had put additions along the back as the years went on. Now, Samuel Townsend was a very popular person in Oyster Bay. He was a successful merchant. He was served as town clerk. He was a justice of the peace. And he was also elected to the New York Provincial Congress in 1776. His son, which you may have heard this name, was Robert Townsend, who was very famous, and he was a member of George Washington's Culper Spy Ring. He was actually Culper Jr. was his tagline. And he was really one of the chief spies in this. Now, Raynham Hall was in center of town, and they handled a lot of things that went on in the household. They handled a lot of local affairs. But when the British came to Long Island, they took occupancy over Raynham Hall. Now, the Townsends were Quakers, so they were able to bury the dead of both American soldiers and the British. So they cohabited Raynham Hall, but what the British did not know is that they had a spy amongst them in Robert Townsend. At one point, a British major by the name of James Andre, and if you've watched the movie Turn, you might be familiar with some of these people from that television series. So Major Andre often visited, he was British, and he often visited the house while it was under British invasion. And during one of his visits, one of the Townsend's daughters overheard Major Andre and Lieutenant Colonel John Grave Simcoe talking about a plan to pay Benedict Arnold to surrender his troops. So what happened then was that, she went to her brother, Robert, and she said, this is what I overheard them say. And Robert then went back and reported this information to General George Washington. Major Andre was quickly captured and hanged, but Benedict Arnold did in fact escape. Now, 3 generations of Townsends actually lived in the home. It was purchased by a woman by the name of Julia Weeks Coles in the year of 1914. She lived there until 1933. The house by this time had been enlarged, and the last Townsends to live there was actually 1851. It was elegantly furnished in the Victorian period. So when you go into that house, you see it's primarily of Victorian nature, but it was obviously from the Revolutionary War time period. Now, the earliest period of time where people started thinking that there was a ghost was actually in 1930. Okay, so this is not something that was in present day that someone said, oh, I think it's haunted. The first sighting of a ghost actually was in 1930. And it was in a book called Raynham Hall's Haunted History. And this is a quote I'm going to read to you. It says, an overnight guest of Julia Coles awoke to the sight and sound of a ghostly white horse rider outside her bedroom window. Now, this ghost is believed to be that of Major Andre himself, and is one of the first ghosts documented at Raynham Hall. Now, on another occasion, Julia's sister, Susan Coles Halstead, this again is a direct quote, cited the specter of an elderly man descending the Victorian staircase. And we're going to show you pictures of the staircase. She believed that it was Robert Townsend, Patriot spy, examining the new Victorian wing. Now, after 1933, it actually operated as a tea room for a while until 1941. At that point, Julia Coles gave Raynham Hall to the Oyster Bay Chamber of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. They did a lot of maintenance work with it and repairs, and they did this work until 1947, and at that point it was deeded to the town of Oyster Bay, who further did restoration and maintenance. Now, in 1953, it was dedicated to the town of Oyster Bay as a historic site, and since then it has been open to the public for viewing as a historical museum. Now, it is believed that the ghost of Robert Townsend was seen at least 2 other times. In January of 2000, a Raynham, so this is more modern, obviously, a Raynham Hall Museum staff member claimed to see a ghostly figure at the top of the Victorian staircase. The man was dressed in a waist-length blue woolen jacket, and he appeared to be looking out of a window, and he was only visible from the waist up. Another figure was seen again just a month later, so this is still in 2002, but this time appeared in the Victorian Hall at the base of the staircase, and he was clearly visible. He was described, and this is in quotes, as a sad-looking man in his late 30s with dark brown hair, prominent sideburns, and a drooping mustache. He was dressed in a long, dark coat and matching trousers. He walked across the hallway and stood beside the grandfather clock and then vanished. Now, although other areas of the house are presumably haunted, the Victorian hall and staircase seem to generate the most activity. There have been many ghost hunting professionals before Joe and I had even arrived on the scene who have investigated Raynham Hall, and they claim that there is, which Joe also confirmed, almost a vortex or a portal of sorts in this area of the hallway where the Victorian staircase is. And for reasons unknown, the spirits seem to really congregate and move on in this area. And Joe will talk to you more about that in a little bit. Do we have a picture of that, Joe? We'll bring that up. Now, in the spring of 1999, this is actually a picture here that Joe put up of the outside of Raynham Hall. And this is the marker. It is on the National Register of Historic Places at this point. And this, okay, this is a good example of the hall as you would be coming into the house and walking towards the kitchen. And you could see the staircase on the left, and then you have a fireplace on the right. And Joe had picked up a lot of things in this area, as well as other, as I mentioned, ghost hunting professionals had always claimed to have a sense of things in this area. So now that we're on the staircase, I will tell you that in the spring of 1999, A visitor walking past the staircase reported hearing footsteps and the swoosh of petticoats. When she turned to see what it was, a portion of a female figure appeared dressed in Victorian clothing. The figure drifted past her and went down the hallway towards the back of the house. The woman remained unidentified. So here's another room in the house of, you could see some of the Victorian things. Now, in the summer of that same year, there was a staff member who was opening up the museum for the day and claimed to hear these heavy footsteps as well. And this is, again, is a quote from my book. There's Joe in action there by the fireplace, checking for EVPs. These are some of his group members. Here he's following some of the Raynham Hall history in this photo. And you have the Townsend slave Bible family tree. But the quote was, this is one of the early kitchen dining rooms that they had. But the quote that I have in my book is that after hearing the heavy footsteps, again, this was a staff member, the second incident from 2000, it followed him into the front hallway from the Victorian portion of the house. And turning around, the staff members saw nothing and the footsteps had stopped. The footsteps were heard once the man re-entered the home. Now, walking through the hallway, one will pass the Victorian dining room. So this is, again, this is the kitchen. Here's some, oh, there's me on assignment. Okay, this is the, there I am. But this is the Victorian dining room, okay? And when you pass that to get to the kitchen area, oftentimes, and I think we had experienced this as well, people have said to have felt cold spots in the area, as well as the smell of apple pie baking in the oven in the kitchen here. And it always happens in the same area between that Victorian dining room and the kitchen. It's been reported many, many times. Also in this area, a staff member claimed to see a black caped form with a hood enter the pantry and kitchen area. Another ghostly figure of a man standing in the doorway appeared by the pantry. And one day a museum volunteer heard the pantry door opened. And when she turned, she saw the man.
Kerriann,
I think you remember that story.
I didn't know that we had that same experience.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
And she said that the apparition was so lifelike that the volunteer actually went out looking for the person, believed it was another member or someone coming through to help set up a display. And when the volunteer called out to a staff member, there was nobody there. The man apparently slipped back into the pantry area and the door was closed. And then she started worrying that it was an intruder. But they searched the building and no one was found. So that's more on the modern day from 2000 on. Also that day, all the doors and windows were locked. So there was no way that anyone intruder or anyone otherwise could possibly have gotten into the building. Now, that particular person, and I don't know how they came up with this, but they believe that this figure was to be the ghost of an Irish immigrant servant named Michael Conlon. Now he had lived, here's another view of the hallway, the vortex area. And if you were leaving the building, you go to where you see that door and you'd make a right and then a left to lead you out to the front of the house to give you an idea of that. But anyway, Michael Conlon was an Irish immigrant who had lived with the Townsend and worked in the house during the 1820s. So this was in the later part of the years. Now, during a Halloween tour back in 2001, a guide told visitors the story of Michael Conlon while he was in the education room gallery on the first floor, which if you see the grandfather clock, the education room would be to the left. I don't think we have a picture of that one, Joe.
That's the video. That's the video room. It's right. It's near there.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's basically in there. It's a small room where you could get information about Townsend. But the room originally had been part of the servants' quarters. And suddenly, while the guide was speaking, the door slowly opened. And this is a direct quote from my book. hit the guide's hand and then closed again. The visitors believed it was part of a Halloween trick, but the guide was terrified. And so everyone was left to wonder, was this the ghost of Michael Conlon making his presence known? Smells such as the scent of roses or women's perfume has also been reported in this room on many an occasion and for reasons unknown. So now this is upstairs, correct, Joe? This is the nursery.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to make our way up the staircase to the second floor, which Joe will tell you when we get to the investigative part. We had a very strange thing happen with my voice actually being. Were you planning on playing that tonight, Joe?
Oh, did you? You know, I debated whether to put that one in. I have it available. I could hunt it up and play it, but I have so many other EVPs.
All right. Well, we'll play the ones. Yeah. Well, I'll have you talk about what happened.
We'll have to save that for Raynham Hall Part 2.
There you go. But I'll tell you a little bit more first about this, and then you can go into that. So when one heads up the so-called haunted staircase to the second floor, the presence of Sarah, known as Sally Townsend, was often felt and is still often felt, especially in the 18th century children's chamber, which Joe had just put up on the screen if you want to go back to that picture. Now, Sally Townsend was known as a spinster.
Which picture, Kerriann?
You had just passed it. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So this is a very haunted room in the house. She had lived in the house for 82 years until her death. So she never married, never had children. As the story is told, Sally, who was one of 3 Townsend sisters during the Revolutionary War, she fell in love with British soldier Lieutenant Simcoe. And Simcoe actually had lived at Raynham Hall in the house during the British occupancy. And he gave Sally the first documented Valentine ever in America. And if you are able to go to the museum, they actually have the original copy of Major Simcoe's Valentine to Sally Townsend. And in this love letter, he expressed his love to her. But however, once the war ended, Simcoe went back to England and never returned, breaking her heart in the process. Rumors have said that because Sally died in the upstairs bedroom, her lonely soul remains in the house, especially in the children's chamber, because she never had children and longed for her own. Now, during our own investigation of the house, we received several EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomenon. They were mainly, right, Joe, if I'm correct, from the second floor of the house. The other things that we had experienced were cold spots that were felt in the dining room near the pantry area, and the creaking sound of a pantry door opening and closing when no one was there.
Which I have that clip for you tonight.
Oh, you do? Good. I know. I mean, this is great for us because it's been so long.
It's been years, yeah.
Since we've actually been to the house and talked about it. So at this point, we have other photos. This must be one of the bedrooms. Some of the dolls. What other photos do we have here, Joe? Anything?
That's it.
This was one of your teams going out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Joe now, who's going to tell you a little bit about our actual investigation, plus the ones that he did prior to the two of us going there. So Joe, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure will. There's a lot of information. As I was writing the notes for this tonight, Kerriann, I realized this is probably like 2 or 3 hours of stuff. So I'll try to paraphrase it. But basically, as I mentioned, I went to Raynham Hall in 2005, and somebody said to me, "You should record for EVPs." And I said, "What the heck is an EVP?" He said, "I don't know, I think it's electronic voice phenomena. Basically, it's the spirits talk to you." So I went into Raynham Hall. I went through the front door, and I turned my little recorder on. I'll show you the recorder I have. It's this one here. Okay, not the same one, but it's one of them. And I said, all right, if any spirits are here, maybe they'd like to talk to me. The first EVP I got there was, I said, is anyone here? And a man's voice in kind of a little sarcastic tone, not bad, but just kind of like I was asking him a question like, do they exist type of question. And he said, there might be someone here. And I think that was one of my first EVPs. I got dozens of EVPs, maybe 100 EVPs in Raynham Hall. And I'm going to play some for you tonight. Over the period from 2005 to 2011 or so, I conducted several investigations there. Of course, Kerriann and I investigated there. I think we investigated there. Let me see. We were there in 2006. We were there in February 2006. So let me talk about that first. So Kerriann and I, of course, we talked about the pantry door sound, which I'm going to play that clip tonight. And we walked around. We had cold spots. We got some warm spots. Then we had this cool thing we did at midnight, which it's rare to get an opportunity to go in a place. Kerriann, right? You and I always say, you know, you can go. We don't need to go into a place in the middle of the night because the spirits will talk to us anytime. Right. We've proven that. Some of our best things, like when we were at the in Oyster Bay, at the place that's going to be in the next book, you know, talking about, and we don't want to mention too much here. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was like 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And right, and we
got it's very different. It's very different from what you see on TV. And when
very different.
In person, we try to tell people that, you know, what you see on TV is dramatized, and we take a very different approach, a very spiritual approach.
Yes, but we did. In this case, we had permission to go into Raynham Hall at midnight. Really, literally at midnight. I think we started setting up, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. We had about, I don't know, about 11 or 12 people in the room, including a reporter, right, for one of the local papers.
Right.
And
right.
we used primarily the ghost meter, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's a little tool that a lot of ghost hunters use. Basically beeps when there's spiritual energy nearby. So we used a communication system where something like 2 beeps is yes, or multiple beeps is yes, and maybe 1 beep is a no. So we had a whole conversation with the spirits of Raynham Hall that night. And I did include one of those clips, the one where Carl, your husband, said, is that Robert Townsend maybe paging us or beeping us? And then all of a sudden the ghost meter starts beeping.
Oh, that's right. I remember that was good.
So we had a lot of most of the EVPs we're going to play tonight, all of them, are what they call white noise EVPs. And what that means is when you go into a room, you know, you have background noise. Our brain tunes it out. The sound of the air, the sound of the heating and ventilation, air conditioning system, the sound of birds outside, water running, wind outside. So spirits can't write a post-it note. So what they do is they modulate their energy, their voice energy. Of course, they don't have vocal cords either. They modulate their energy on this wave, this sort of radio wave that's created by the background noise. And Kerriann, your camera is getting very bright. Are you getting a spirit? Is this a net from Country House?
No, this has happened because I'm sitting here and I can say that nothing has changed.
Kerriann, we get followed around by several spirits. Now, this is a net
from
the Country House.
Flicker, so it's
I'll tell you why a net's here, because there's an experience I had with Raynham Hall with a couple other members that had to do. I actually wrote in my notes here about Country House, this place on this movie that we played at the Masonic Lodge, which is there. It goes again. See
you're seeing firsthand.
You're seeing firsthand.
Okay,
that's the spirits.
paranormal.
That's Annette. That's Annette, the ghost from Country House. Hi, Annette. She does that, right? You did that time we did the pilot movie, and
it's one of her house,
and all right. So anyway, back to this. We had a lot of phenomena when we did the midnight seance. Besides the beeping, Corey, if you remember, had an infrared thermometer, and we had temperature fluctuations within a few seconds from.
I'm really not doing anything.
Well, I believe you, from like 50, 59, 60 degrees, 62 degrees, all the way up to I think it went up to 88 at one point. So it was really cool. We had a lot of energy there. The spirits were cool. So that was a cool thing at midnight. But again, you don't have to do the midnight thing, those talking, but it did add to ambience of it. And it was a rare event. We were able to go there again, do that. Let me see. So we had a lot of EVPs. And I'm going to play those in a few seconds here. But on my investigations, there were 3 of us in the foyer of the entrance with the first slide you saw in PowerPoint of the entrance, all the people coming in the door. That's also where the portal is. And there were 3 of us, and Jeannie from Raynham Hall, Jeannie, who was the tour director there, and her son worked in the front, taking care of people coming in, guests. We all 3 of us smelled fresh apple pie baking, and it was so potent. We all smelled it at the same time. It was like someone had shoved fresh baked Thanksgiving apples right up your nostrils. It was that pungent, that beautiful, just a great smell. Now the kitchen is on the other side of, all the way down the hall that you saw, completely on the other side of the building. And it was closed, and they haven't been cooking there for a while. But this clairalience, which is a form of mediumship, which means smell, clairalience, like clairvoyance. We smelled the apple pie for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then boom, it was gone. So it was just like a little wisp of energy in the atmosphere in the woodwork of a house that we were treated to. We all wanted to go out to the farm stand and buy pies after that. So that was another cool thing. Kerriann, I did this thing called a History Bridge Project, which is very interesting. I ran that for a year or so with the cooperation of the staff, the education, and the historian staff members. The idea was I wanted to get oral history from people like Robert Townsend that lived back in the Revolutionary War period.
Right.
And I said, well, if we can get EVPs, people with voices of spirits, they lived then. Why not have them tell us history and answer questions? And we had a lot of fun with that. We got some good answers.
And that's when it really started for us with the EVPs, because we realized that we could get information from these people from the past.
That's right. And this was pre-Ghost Box days. We were using just a regular old tape recorder. One of the interesting things, which I'm going to play in my video here in a minute or so, was where one of the staff members asked Robert Townsend if he owned slaves, and at the time that was acceptable back then, or servants, but there were servants and slaves, right, Kerriann, back then? It was a bit before the, right. He said, Robert said, we had several. She asked, did they come from New York City? Where did they come from? They had several servants that came at different, they had Irish, they had people from the islands there, all kinds of people that worked there, passed through there. I also had it, I don't have it tonight, but I have an EVP of workers working on the steamship, where they were kind of singing a song as they were pulling in the steamship, the line, pulling the boat to the dock. And they were kind of doing like this chant, like that kind of thing. So that was it. So we had a lot of cool EVPs. Just a couple of quick other things that happened. It was interesting, Kerriann. I had a group event where we went actually up to Tapan, up in Orange, New York, Orange County, New York. We went to where Major Andre was hung.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah, and we actually we interviewed the owner of the 76 Tavern up there, which is very haunted. And I actually got we were talking about Major Andre, and right when we were talking about him, we got an EVP of a horse whinnying.
Yes, I remember you played this for
yeah,
me.
remember that?
Exactly.
So it's all connected.
And Joe, if you could explain maybe, I know we have a question, we will take the questions towards the end, but maybe if you could explain a little bit about that vortex and what creates a spiritual or haunted vortex or portal, and why is it in that part of the house?
Yeah, sure. Okay, let me think. I want to give a good analogy here. Okay, let's say that you have a, you know how they say sometimes you should leave something well enough alone? The more you mess with something, the bigger it gets. I'm trying to think of like a paint chip, like you have a little paint chip on the wall, and you rub it, and then more paint comes off, and now you got to paint the whole wall. The whole thing starts over, something like that. The thing with a portal, think of Grand Central Station in New York. You have a lot of people there. You have people going to and fro on buses, trains, going to the airport, walking up the escalators to, 7th Avenue, wherever, 5th Lexington Avenue. And the thing is, when you open up the communication to the spirit world. When something paranormal happens, it opens up a little portal, kind of like a little window. Think of a portal on a ship, on a cruise ship. The more that you do stuff there, the more that happens, and the more that people communicate with the other side, the more that people witness stuff, the bigger the hole gets. And it's sort of like, I got a good analogy. You know, when you have like a river going down a river goes downstream, and it wears away more and more dirt and rocks, the river spreads out more, and it just keeps wearing away more ground as the energy of the river flows, pushes downward. So the portal is like that. So the key thing is, if you're going to do paranormal work, or you want to channel mediumship, you want to talk to spirits, you open up the portal, but then you want to make sure you close it. In the case of Raynham Hall, it just keeps getting opened up. And then you have Ghostbusters that go there, and like ourselves, we go there and investigate. And then you have other people see things, and then you have the energy of thousands and thousands of historical figures and people that stayed there, people that lived there, that died there, that got shot there, or had fought the British, and the British got killed, and the revolutionary, the patriots got killed. You have all that energy. So the portal is huge there. And because the Daughters of the American Revolution keep such a this beautiful building, they keep improving it. They educate people. More people go visit. They want to hear about the ghost stories. They want to hear about the history. It keeps the portal open. Does that help?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I want people to understand that not every place we investigate has a portal per se. But
That's
Raynham
until
Hall,
I get there.
exactly. But Raynham Hall, I would say, is probably the best example. And a more modern location, which if you've joined our webinars before, you would remember us talking about Fiorella Dolce Bakery in Huntington. And that's another place that, for reasons unknown, has this type of portal or a vortex. So that gives you a little bit of idea of what that is, but it's not for every location. But Raynham Hall is known specifically for having this in that hallway.
Yes, and everybody, people also often ask us about Ouija boards when we talk about Halloween stuff, and a Ouija board is a portal opening tool. So it kind of opens up a portal in your living room, and that's why people get stuff that comes through.
It can be very dangerous to use. It's not anything that I've ever used. Joe has used it under certain controlled circumstances in other areas, not with our investigations.
Right. So we're running over, Kerriann, but we're okay, right, on time?
Yeah. So you're going to play us some of your beats. Okay, great.
Now,
and then you'll talk about the what happened upstairs with the voiceover, right? I don't remember.
Yeah, let me talk about that now,
okay.
and then we'll go, because then we'll just play the thing through.
Mm-hmm.
So Kerriann's voice was morphed by the spirits to make her sound like some woman like Natasha from Transylvania, like Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon. Mm-hmm. So she said something, she was talking about her recorder, trying to get her the recorder, because Kerriann started using, the EVP recorder. And she says, I was talking to you about whatever, something. And she sounds like something right out of like a
My voice had completely changed.
This first happened to her when we did our other webinar. We were talking about St. James, the Satan's Trails place. And you had the recording where you said to me, oh, look, Joe, a sign on the tree, it says Haunted Forest, Witch's Castle 1 mile. And instead, the spirits morphed it when it got recorded to Haunted Cars, Witch's Forest 1 mile. And that was a whole nother story, backstory to why they said haunted cars with the car horn. But we'll do that when we have a humorous webinar night.
But it was interesting because it morphed, the spirits morphed over my own voice and whatever I was saying and changed it. So it was very odd for me to hear that.
Yeah, and I didn't play everything for Kerriann. Actually, Kerriann, it did say some things that were kind of, it got a little rough there, I think, and that's why I didn't include it, because I would edit out everything. But it made you sound less. It made you sound like you were going to go bite somebody in the middle of the night, like a vampire.
Right.
But anyway, there's more that I want to talk about. Let's get right to the EVPs. All right. So now there's a lot of them here. They're going to go very fast, so I'm going to pause this a couple of times and just explain what's going on. These are all from Raynham Hall except for one, which I think actually came from a different, maybe from the Masonic Lodge, which is next door, which is also very haunted, where my friend, who unfortunately passed several years ago, Larry, used to be one of the Masons there. And they told me that the ghosts, the Townsend ghosts, used to come through the wall because they're literally next door. And we had a gavel being struck as if Teddy Roosevelt himself was calling the Masonic meeting to order. And we had one EVP where we asked if how many spirits were here, and they said 14, and I repeated back 14, and they said 14, and then the spirit says very humorously, "Is it too high?" Like, in other words, there are too many spirits here. So that's in this set tonight. So here we go. Let me get this set up, and okay, can you all see the first one?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let me just adjust the screen here a bit so I can see it a little bit. Okay, here we go. All right.
I have a recorder if you want to leave us a message about yourselves or about the house.
Well, I just want to say, some of you may be listening on headsets or speakers or something. Some of these are hard to hear. They sound better if you listen on a good headphone or headset. But they are what they are. They are white noise EVPs. They're not ghost box. They're not high fidelity like you get on the newer equipment that we now use in our investigation.
And then also, Joe, to point out, in this particular one, you'll hear that beep, 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 beep. That's the ghost meter.
That's the ghost meter.
Electromagnetic field indicator that
That's
would
right.
pick up energy in the area, which if you have to rule out anything sensible like electrical outlets and things of that nature. And if it continues to beep, then without ruling out anything, then chances are there is some kind of spiritual activity creating the energy in the area. So if you listen in the background of this, you will hear that.
Mm-hmm. We'd be happy to put anything you come up with in the history if we can verify it. I'll give you the recorder now. You can say what you want into the microphone. I'm getting a sense he's looking at you like you never were interested in money. We disrespect spirits when they do give us messages, and we just make them like they don't exist.
Was somebody helping me out with my counterpoint before? Because whatever I was making sounded great.
When a new director comes, do you like that wreath on the door there? Do you want it to stay there? I will make sure they keep it there if you want it there. Okay, it doesn't matter.
By the way, did anyone hear those voices out there? Yeah, it wasn't a car, it was... Oh, the car. Okay. This house is always a lot of education going on here. This is what I'm hearing. If you want to talk into it, I'll put it over here. You have to talk into the microphone. Let's know what's my point. First, we saw the chandelier.
And this was at
What
the
do they call that?
seance at
Chandelier,
midnight.
just light fixture.
Robert, where did your servants come from? Where were your servants from in New York City?
Corey, why don't you ask a question of Dan, because you're the closest to Dan. You might have this connection.
Is there a link between you and this house?
How many spirits are here?
14? 14? All right. You got an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert County.
Robert Townsend. Yeah. There you go.
That one's not. There we go.
Zep, what time is it?
I'm sorry, Joe, but I don't have a lot.
I was just curious in case I need to come back here.
We're gonna have to come back because this place closes at 5, I mean today, but we should really get on with the tour. Because we're not gonna finish it for the sake of the others. I'm gonna go now.
Me too. And maybe they're using it for something. Did you just hear? Was that the?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was that or.
Oh, it's these boards. Let's try these boards.
No, it wasn't that.
Was it that? Did you hear it felt like somebody was opening the door?
Here, yeah.
I felt that, like it was a door opening. I felt like somebody was
Yeah.
peeking out, like Lisa was there and she was going to open it. Did you feel it?
Yeah, I didn't feel it, but I heard it.
Yeah, I mean, heard it.
the sound.
You heard it. And then we have it on tape. We'll see. That will be a keeper. Let's see. Okay. Well, in the kitchen, it's interesting. Did you hear it again?
Yes, I definitely.
I love this place.
Okay, now this last one is a little crazy, Kerriann. And I don't know if I played this one for you. Maybe I did. So, you know, when we get white noise EVPs, we get very whispery answers. This one's actually, I call this one the Wild West courtroom. You hear, and I've listened to this many times and tried to translate it. They actually did a little cowboy Western drama for me. Did I ever play this one for you, Kerriann?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so I have the text here, the transcript. It basically, there's a witness and she's complaining that someone publicly exposed her in some way. And she says, right there. And then the plaintiff says, trusting my hired hand. In other words, it was someone that worked for her at Raynham Hall. And he did this, you know, he did something inappropriate to this woman. And then the judge says he'll get 1 to 4, I assume, years. And if he's found contemptful, which is an old word, they don't use that now. If he's found contemptful, then you'll hear the defendant's girlfriend say no, like, you know, oh my God, he's going to go to jail. And then you hear the bailiffs say to the defendant, I could see him putting the hand on the person's shoulder saying, fellow, like, are you all right? And then you hear the defendant's girlfriend sigh, a big sigh, like, oh my God, this is, you know, the end of my boyfriend's life. Now, there was no one in the room except me. I couldn't have made this up, all these sound effects. So here we go.
Put like a spoon to me, right there. Put a spoon in that, not in that. So while the floor, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, that was a new one. Now,
Yeah.
Again, with these EVPs, because if you had joined us before, you heard many of our ghost box recordings, which are
Right,
what we've been
much
doing
clearer.
the past couple of years, which is live time communication with the spirits that we get recording. With these EVPs, I would say that the ones we played for you tonight are Class B, almost Class A, which are that has that tinny kind of sound to it. If you want to hear more EVPs from and ghost box recordings from our other investigations, you can go on to my website again, KerriannFlanaganBrosky.com, or if you can't remember my big long name, you can go into ghostoflongisland.com. But these, again, these were from our very early investigations before we started using this various other equipment. And we still had gotten, I mean, I think it's great, Joe, what you had gotten back in those early days.
Yeah, that was early on, yeah.
And it's a very active place. They've had a lot of different ghost hunting teams go in there. I think it was even on a news program at one point, 60 Minutes or 2020 or something like that. So it's really fascinating. I do have 2 questions in the chat here, so I want to go into that for a minute. Okay, the first one is from Jean, and her question is, why does the spirit stay in the house? Are they trapped? Can they move on? So would you want to take that one, Joe?
Sure. I have a little different theory. You know, we always talk about spirits and ghosts. We talk about 10 different types of ghosts in many times in our lectures, and people say, are the ghosts stuck there? Yes and no. Spirits are people, so they come and go. They might linger at a place that they spent their life at because they like it, like Annette, the ghost who has been haunting Raynham Hall for what, 300 years? Right,
Country house.
I'm sorry, country house. I always say that. They're, to me, they're like the same place, which was part of a story I didn't mention tonight. But anyway, which is why Annette showed up. She's messing with me right now. But anyway, yeah. So, you know, spirits can stay with the property. Now, if you have a classic apparition, an imprinted or place memory or residual haunting, that's basically energy that's kind of stuck in the woodwork of the house. And that gets triggered when atmospherically the conditions are right, or somebody goes in there, says something, does something, goes at a certain time of the day or year, or stands in a certain place, and boom, they see the ghost, like at the stairway. And it just appears. It might walk past them, but it won't interact with them. See, spirits are sentient beings. They will interact. They'll do things to get our attention. They'll talk to us through a medium, or they'll show us some phenomena. Ghosts basically just do their thing. So a ghost of the type that's an imprinted or place memory that's stuck in the woodwork is just going to just stay there until the energy over hundreds of years dissipates. If you see pictures of these castles, like in Scotland or something, you'll see these spirits, these ghosts, like of the monk or the dark figure. You'll see they're like 3 or 4 feet above the foundation, because the foundation is crumbled. There used to be a floor there. So they stay where they are, okay, but they still make their appearance. So spirits do come and go, and they can cross over, they can go on, they can not come back to the physical plane. But certain types of spirits or apparitions, ghosts, are embedded in the woodwork, okay? So they don't. So there's kind of 2 different things. Spirits move, some ghosts just are stuck.
Yes. Okay, that was a good answer. Okay.
I tried.
All right, next, Catherine actually has a little bit of a story for us with a
Sure.
question. She writes you're welcome, Jean, on a visit to Raynham with my son. We were the only visitors at the time. I was upstairs after just leaving the Revolutionary era bedroom. I stopped next to the staircase railing, and it felt like I was enveloped by icy cold. Not normal AC, but an absolutely frigid cold spot. Very strange, but then I went down the Victorian staircase and stood at the foot, looking up, waiting for my son. I did not see anything, but all of a sudden got the strongest sensation that someone moved quickly around and behind me. Well, let me just finish this. Enough to make me turn around and look. And there was a distinct whiff of a pipe, but no one was there. So her question, thank you for sharing that story, Catherine.
Thank you,
Her
Catherine.
question is, what are cold spots and why do they manifest?
Sure. Could I take that one?
Yes.
Okay. So spirits, as I said earlier, they can't write a Post-it note. So what they do is they have their energy. They're sentient beings. We're all energy. As we spoke earlier, Kerriann, our bodies are a rental car. They don't last forever. And when it's time to send them to the junkyard, or maybe that's a little harsh, but it's time to like donate them to Cars for Kids or something.
Right.
Then we shed our body, we go back to our natural spiritual state. Maybe we come back again, if you believe in that. Anyway, as far as cold spots or hot spots, warm spots, the spirits monkey with energy. It's a branch of science called ITC. It's basically where they monkey around with anything electronic or anything that has to do with energy, water, light anomalies, temperature, to basically interact with us. So I found with the cold spots that when you get a cold spot, usually a spirit is kind of right. You're standing right in their spot. They're with you. They might even be walking through you. We had that happen at Strawberry.
Yeah, we've experienced them in many.
Where people have walked through. Yeah. So
we just had that on a recent investigation at an undisclosed location.
That's right.
Last Friday. So.
That's right. Yeah, that was cool. So cold spots there, it's one way the spirits let you know they're there, but it's also because they're in your space, or you're in their space actually. And they're taking energy out of it either to manifest something so they can talk to you in some way or give you a sign, or they're just there and you're just feeling them close to the physical. So it's like you're in their portal area in a way.
Yeah.
It's like you know what it is? It's like if you're in a bed and breakfast that's perched on a rocky cliff in Maine, and there's a nor'easter outside, and inside's nice and warm and everything, and you open the window and the cold wind comes rushing in, and the water from the ocean spray, and then you close the window. That's kind of what you're in that spot. So
Yeah, and it's very common. People
very
report
common.
this
Yeah.
feeling all the time, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just
It's
part of,
perfectly natural. They just love you. They tell me they love you, by the way, whoever it is. You're
Okay.
starting to get bright again over there.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, a little
Well,
bit, yeah.
we have here. So Catherine says, "Wow, thank you." I like this one from an anonymous attendee, undisclosed location. Yes, Joe and I are still not revealing the places in the new book. However, if you'd like some clues as to that, then become a fan of my Facebook page at Kerriann Flanagan Brosky. It's not a friend page. So if you get to that, that's a mistake. You have to find the page that you can like. And I'll probably do it again in the new year, run a contest where you have to guess where Joe and I are based on selfies that we take of one another.
We have some those are tough clues there.
Yeah, and you can win prizes and things like that. So I like to sort of not reveal many places of where we have been investigating, but there are going to be 18 places. Everything's done. All the investigations are done. I'm finishing up the last 3 stories. My deadline's the end of January, so I'm really getting towards the tail end. But a lot of the places in the new book are open to the public. We have amazing conversations with the ghost box.
With the ghost box, which,
yeah.
I mean, if you listen to these EVPs, when you hear we have a couple conversations. We have one that's like 6 minutes long. It's nonstop discussion.
Yeah, it's a lot to try to scale it down.
It's funny.
So,
we got British accents,
Yeah.
people coming in and singing and everything. By the way, I just want to mention the spirits of Raynham Hall just want me to tell you one thing. I do have some clips that we just ran out of time, but I do have several clips and they're hard to hear. So that's why I probably didn't include them, of beautiful people singing on EVPs. So maybe in a future event, maybe we'll do
we
like
could
a
do
music
something like
thing.
that.
Yeah.
Right. We still have a couple more questions, actually.
Mhm.
Marissa wants to know, have you guys been to the Amityville Horror House? And what I've said with this before, I included in my original Ghosts of Long Island book in, 2006, Joe? I did include the Amityville Horror. Joe and I did not go inside. But the purpose of my books is I've tried to make it that Long Island is more than the Amityville Horror. It's a place that is rich in history, both our American Revolutionary past and our Native American past. And it's also a very spiritual place. So it was in the original Ghost book because I thought if someone came from California, the first thing they would say is, where's the Amityville Horror? But that has multi-layers to it. And the one layer that a lot of people are unaware of is the fact that before that house was even put there, before those murders had taken place, it was actually a hospital area for the Native Americans, and many of them died there. And so there's a lot of other things besides just the DeFeo murders that come along with the Amityville Horror. So we have kind of moved on from that. Catherine says, you've heard doors close, footsteps. Have you ever heard disembodied voices with your ears and not ones that come through an EVP or ghost box? And we have. One of them we heard very clear was a wailing sound at the Execution Rocks Lighthouse off of Kings Point. There were people that were tortured there during the Revolutionary War. And Joe just happened to have his recorder going, but we heard it with our ears before that. Another time we were out in Setauket with Margot Arceri from the Three Village and Historical Society. And we were walking the trails where the Culper Spy Ring and the British once roamed. And again, as Joe had mentioned, that there are certain things that are trapped in the atmosphere. We actually heard the sound of cannon fire. And it was one of those things, again, that Joe keeps his recorder running, even if we're just walking or not really doing much, he'll keep it on for the sake of getting these things, if so, because sometimes it is possible. So those are two examples.
Yeah.
And there, we probably have more, Joe. I
Yeah,
can't
I'd like
think
to
of any.
mention one, and she's talking about direct clairaudience, clairaudience being the audio part of mediumship. I was in the Sable Modern Diner, which is no longer there in Sable. It's now a sushi place, I think. And I was there all alone in the back room waiting for my group to arrive. And all of a sudden, somebody yelled in my ear, "Hi, Joe." Loud as complete. You could just like some guy came up to me and just screamed in your ear like a prank. And of course, I turned around and there was no one there. 5 minutes later, one of my group members arrives and he says, "How's it going?" But there was no one there. In fact, it was snowing out, I think, that night. The weather wasn't that good, and we were actually going to leave and go to a different location where the snow hadn't gotten bad yet. But that happens a lot, and it's quite normal. Don't be afraid if you hear a voice in the wind call your name out, especially if it's a loved one, because remember, the wind, the sound, the ambient sound of the background around you is also a catalyst for them talking. So you can hear it. Yes, you can hear it with your eardrums. The other type of clairaudience is where you hear the words in your mind, which is what when mediums do things, that they hear the speech, but it's not actually direct through the eardrum. It's you hear it up in here.
Exactly.
Good question. Yeah.
And now this last one, this is an interesting question from Julie. Have you ever had any experiences on All Souls Day? And I can't think back and say actually we have, but again, what people often think because of what TV offers
I
is
have.
that, oh, you have on All Souls
Yeah, but
Day?
you talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll throw it out. Yeah.
Is that, obviously that's a very special day. But people always say, oh, do you only get things if you go to a cemetery where dead people are or days that people died? Communication with the spirits happen all of the time. So even in my own world, my father had passed away. It'll be 16 years in April. And I don't need to go to a cemetery to visit his grave. There's a lot of people that like to do that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for myself, I find that I don't need to, because I have had ways of communicating. And if you listen to our past webinars, we did do one on spirit communication with your loved ones. So you don't have to be in any specific place or day to have these experiences, because again, on the other side, there is no time. There's no sense of time, and there's no sense of place. So for me personally, I have not, to my recollection, had anything specifically on that day. But Joe, I think you said you had something.
Yeah, I did. It was a haunting experience. It was really pretty beautiful. It was my first experience with an apparition, probably. I was actually in the Lambertville Inn, or Lambertville House in Lambertville, New Jersey, before they renovated it. And back in I think it was in the 80s. And it was 2:30 in the morning, All Souls Day. I had actually rented the bed and breakfast, the room, at midnight on Halloween night. And about 3 in the morning, a little boy, apparition, a little boy running down the hall, he stopped at my room and he just stood at the door. And I saw this beautiful emerald green mist that kind of just enveloped the door in the moonlight. And his spirit was there. It formed a little bit. And then I heard him run pitter patter, running down the hall to the end of the hall. And I heard the screen door slam as he ran out the door. And that actually happened on 2 or 3 occasions every time I stayed in that room at that same night. It was always that time of the morning. But anyway, long story short, the interesting thing was that door, there's no stairway. That was on the 2nd floor. That door you'd end up falling down 2 stories down to the backyard, the concrete, the backyard. So it was definitely an apparition. But it was a little boy, and he was just looking for his parents or something. But it was
Interesting.
early. Yeah.
Okay. We have another.
This is fun. I'm glad we're running over, Kerriann.
Oh, I think, wait, I think Jean had a question and I lost it. have to come back, Jean. I was typing her something else. In the meantime, Catherine said, "Oh, thank you for a great presentation and sharing your investigations."
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Did we have one more question, Jean? I think I accidentally erased it. Oh, there it is. Have spirits touched you? That's a good question. For me, no. For Joe, yes. So Joe, if you want to explain that one.
Yeah, I guess I'll just give one example. So we were at Sag de Toast Manor in Bayshore, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to the second floor, which is where the servants' quarters are. And I went with one of the tour directors there that day when we were investigating. And all of a sudden we had the sensation of being engulfed in love, and our face was little puffs of air on our face. The servants were kissing us. And it was really
you
beautiful.
felt it. I didn't feel it, but you're more in tune.
Well, you weren't with me. You were downstairs. No, yeah, we went upstairs. We were in the hallway.
Okay.
I don't think you were with me. No, okay. the lady that was Nancy, was it?
Right. It was the two of you. Yeah. Okay. I know sometimes when we are in investigations, Joe and I go our separate ways.
But it's very common too. Yes, I get touched a lot. In fact, when I do readings, a lot of times when I want to find out how the spirit died, when I'm reading for someone, I'll ask the spirit to touch the part of my body, put just a little sensation or pressure on the part of my body that says how they die. For example, if my chest begins to get a little pressure, I say they died of a heart attack. If my throat closes up, then they had like lung cancer or esophageal cancer or something, things like that. So
these things are typical for people that are mediums. That's why Joe experiences these things.
But as Kerriann mentioned, we all can have these experiences. Right. So and they can be frightening to people if you're not prepared. Like she has William Sidney Mount. He always stands over his shoulder and said, "Hey, Dave, why don't you write about this and use this book cover?" Yeah. He probably touches her on the shoulder there, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely do something on William Sidney Mount in the future. I have one last question or two. Okay. Marissa says, if you both had to pick one place on Long Island where you think there's the most energy, where would it be? Without a doubt, the Country House Restaurant in Stony Brook. I mean, it's really, it's just jam-packed with consistent energy. It's the most actively haunted place on Long Island. If you're looking for a popular haunted town with ghosts, I would say Cold Spring Harbor is probably the most haunted town on Long Island. So
I'm going to say my house, my former residence in Hampton Bays, my room was probably like that scene in Poltergeist when the guy says we had a little toy that over 3 hours moved 2 inches or something, and then what's his name opens up the door and everything's flying around. I mean, you know. Go ahead. That's it.
Well, there's one more question because Jean has a concern, and then we'll make some announcements. Jean says sometimes at night, because she was the one that asked the question about, if we feel anything physical, that she feels a spirit touch her, and she feels like it wants to tell her something, and that it scares her. So how would you respond to that? Because we've interviewed some people for the new book, and who have had similar situations.
Yeah. You want to answer that? You want me to?
I'll let you answer it. Go ahead, John.
All right. Well, first of all, they could just friends of ours once went to the West Coast to California. They were in Pasadena or something, and they were staying in separate beds, husband and wife. And in the middle of the night, the wife felt somebody getting into bed with her, and she figured it was her husband. And she looked over, and no, he was in his bed. So evidently somebody wanted to join her and just, join her bed. So here's what I would say to you. First of all, these are people. If it's someone that's a family member that's trying to get your attention, okay, then you could communicate with them. But you are able to set boundaries. And if it's some strange spirit that just happens to haunt the property or is just roaming by and said, hey, that looks like a nice person to hang out with, just tell them it's not appropriate if it bothers you. Say, look, you want to talk to me? Give me a sign, flash the lights, give me some symbols, a heart, a Valentine or something if you love me, but don't touch me. Don't touch him while I'm in bed, because you're very vulnerable. Keep in mind that when you're in that sleep, that restful time, you're about to go to the other side as far as rest and spiritual. There's a lot of activity. Spirits often try to communicate with us at night. So, but if you're getting physical, if it's a physical thing and it's making you nervous, don't be scared, but just say, you know what, hands off.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate. You want to talk to me, fine, but this is not how I want to communicate. No, they'll listen to you.
Right. Good answer, Joe.
It's very common too. Don't feel, it's not like it's just happened to you. It's
Right.
We're in a universe where there are billions and billions of souls that are walking through our bodies all the time. We're in their space, they're in our space. It's a very active universe. So they're just not physical. So since they're invisible, like the invisible man, right? I mean, it's like they have an advantage. So don't be worried about it. If you have any other questions about that, or you're having other phenomena, let me know, or let us know.
Yeah, Jean says, I don't feel malice, but it startles you. Yeah, because
Yeah.
Of course it would startle you.
Yeah,
because
tell
it's
them when
not
you're
something that's like a normal thing
No,
that we experience.
after 5
so.
o'clock, tell them the office is closed.
Yeah, and we have
Yes.
told people in other circumstances too, to talk to them. I said, I know it sounds crazy because you feel like you're talking to no one, but they do hear you, and they a lot of times will respond.
Yeah.
So
You have some announcements?
I think that's it. So I want to wrap up some things now. As I've mentioned in the past, Joe and I are usually on book tour together every fall. And obviously this year was different. So we started doing these webinars. So if you like, what you've heard, you can drop us a line. We decided moving forward, because I don't know if we're going into lockdown again, but we are going to do 2 of these webinars a month. So I would like to tell you about what next week's topic is, which is very interesting. It's called Understanding Orbs and Apparitions. And again, it's at 7:30 p.m. And we will give an in-depth discussion on what orbs and apparitions are. And in this virtual event, we will show examples of the many orbs and apparitions that we have captured ourselves over the years. So that's going to be a really good one if you're interested in that. The other thing, if you want to know more about what we're going to be doing going forward with the webinars, and if you want an invitation to the book launch, a book review next year, and to know when the book's coming out and various other things, I suggest you go onto my website. Again, that's KerriannFlanaganBrosky.com or GhostsofLongIsland.com and sign up for the monthly newsletter. You'll get that, and you'll get reminders for webinars. I'm also doing something, since we can't do in-person events, that I set up new for this fall, a shopping cart on my website where you can directly purchase copies of books. It would be Historic Haunts of Long Island, Historic Crimes of Long Island, my novel, The Metal, and the children's book, The Ghostly Tales of Long Island. All of those can be purchased directly through my website. And this spot that you can tell me, I can personalize it with any message you want and sign them. And I'm offering free shipping until the end of the year. So with the holidays coming, if that's something that interests you, you can check it out. And Joe and I are both, like I said, on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. So I think we have one final, let's see. Okay, one final question before we end it. Have you ever had an issue where you were uncomfortable? Not really, because of the fact, Joe has other experiences separate from mine where he has been uncomfortable when he first started this work. For me, I have to say no. I'm someone that's very firm in my faith. I'm born and raised a Catholic. And we both stay away from anything that's negative or demonic in nature. I would say the closest thing that we came to be uncomfortable, which we've mentioned in the past, was at Potter's Field in Yaphank, when I didn't pick it up, but Joe picked up energy that was a little different, and he was not happy with the energy in the area. And so he told us that it was time to go. And I always listen to Joe if he says it's time to go.
That was an unusual time.
It
Usually
was.
We don't do that.
Yeah, it was. But most of the time, our experiences are very positive. We're dealing with people from history, and we haven't had a problem. And I hate to say most of the time, well, not most of the time, but on occasion, it's actually, we worry more about living people. Like when we used to go through the woods, and Sweet Hollow Road back in the early days when I was doing things like Mary's Grave and everything. We were more concerned about real people than we were about
Yeah, they're the ones you have to worry about. The
yeah.
spirits, remember the spirit world is all moms and dads and their moms and dads and their moms and dads who've passed. So where you might have one evil person out of a million, there's a lot of love in the spirit world, and they always want to help you. They're always around us, and maybe we should end and talk about just the fact that the purpose of what Kerriann and I do have changed into really a spiritual mission. We want to take the power out of paranormal and just make it normal.
We want it to be very positive, and I'm glad we have some positive input from Marissa saying this is a great way to reach masses during these times. Keep the webinars coming. Thank you so much, Marissa,
Thank you so
because
much.
this has been very challenging for us to try to reinvent the wheel and figure out how to reach our audiences. And if it wasn't for all of you, we wouldn't be doing this. So I just want to take this time to thank all of you for supporting us during these challenging times, because being an author is a business too, and it's been a rough go for what we do. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Okay, we have a couple of things. Marissa says she lives near Sweet Hollow Road. Jean
I could
says
tell
she's
you that
in.
we should do a play. We should do one on Sweet Hollow Road. We have a ton of stuff.
Yeah, we should. Okay. Well, like I said, make sure you get on the list. Thank you all. You're all thanking me. Thank you. You know, to me and Joe. Make sure you get on the list for the newsletter, and you'll be updated all the time. I try not to put too many emails out. And that's it. So thank you guys for joining us. This was really nice. It's good for us too, because we don't get out much either anymore. So, and we get to share what we've learned with.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Kerriann, I think one advantage of doing this format too is, as far as the EVPs and the PowerPoint and stuff, I think it's actually better because everybody's sitting home.
Yeah.
Or they're, and they're on headsets, or they have good speakers. It's a quiet location where we do these sometimes in a large audit, like Eyes of Learning, like in Levittown, big auditorium. You lose a lot of the fun and enjoyment.
But then we don't get to see your smiling faces either.
That's
so
true.
it's hard. I just see Joe all the time. And do follow us for next year. You guys are going to love the new book.
Oh, so, you're not. You guys, you do not. You have no idea. What we have. And we haven't talked about. I'm not going to. I know we're done here tonight, but Kerriann, I have my spirit guides that we talk with all the time on Ghostbox, and there's a whole thing. I mean, we talk to spirits all the time. But
any teasers, join my Facebook thing, and you could be in the contest, and you could find out. But you have to solve the mystery when I put up the questions. So I'm planning on doing that. You
always wanted to be Nancy Drew, didn't you?
I did. I was a big follower of Nancy Drew when I was growing up. So, all right, everybody, I'll let you guys go. Thank you for your wonderful comments. Catherine, Angela, everyone in here giving wonderful comments.
Yeah, great questions and comments.
So thank you. It keeps us going. We need to hear this nice feedback. So thank you, one and all. I'm going to end the meeting now, and hopefully we'll see you next week for Orbs and Apparitions. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.